the Republican Party has talked a big game when it comes to repealing the Affordable Care Act, and Bernie Sanders said something in an interview with MSNBC that I thought was really fascinating. He says that after 8 years of smack talking, they're actually getting a little bit nervous about actually repealing the Affordable Care Act, because obviously they don't have a replacement. And throwing 30 million people off of their current health insurance plan is not a good way to govern and not a good way to win elections. So here's what he had to say.
So what do you do as Democrats? Do you oppose whatever replacement plan they come up with? Can you see a scenario where you could support?
Okay, this is not a difficult proposition. What sane people will do is sit together and say, okay, are there problems with the Affordable Care Act? Yes. Were there problems, serious problems with the American healthcare system before the Affordable Care Act? Let's not forget, everything wasn't perfect before Barack Obama became president. We had 50 million people who had no health insurance. We were paying the highest prices in the world. So the question is, what sane people do is say, okay, what do you think are the problems? What do I think are the problems? How do we address those problems? How do we work together? What you don't do is say, we are going to repeal the entire Affordable Care Act, and we got nothing to replace it.
They have the votes to repeal it, though, right?
Yeah, but they got nothing to, yes, they do. But I think there are a number of Republicans who are getting a little bit nervous and understanding that, yeah, it's easy to repeal, but what do you replace it with? Is it responsible to simply throw the whole thing out without having another replacement?
So do you think that Republicans may not have the vote to repeal it in the first place?
I think, I can't predict, and I'm not part of the Republican caucus, to be sure, but I think there are some Republicans who are getting a little bit nervous to understand you can't throw 20 million people off of health insurance without having some type of replacement plan.
So I really thought that was fascinating, because I suspected that they were getting nervous. I know Donald Trump has certainly expressed reservations on Twitter that they need to be careful, this is his words, about repealing the Affordable Care Act, because this is currently the Democratic Party's disaster, and if they're not careful, it could become the Republican Party's disaster. So Bernie said they understand that it's easy to repeal, but what do you replace it with? Is it responsible to throw the whole thing out without replacing it? Right, they should be nervous, because running government is about more than talking shit. Now they actually have to deliver for the American people. And the Republican Party, they've proven time and again that they have no idea what they're doing, and they don't know how to govern. They don't know how to do anything but be sellouts and appease their corporate donors and billionaire donors. So when it comes to actually providing the American people with health insurance, they have no idea the scale of this task and what they actually need to do. And they're probably realizing that anything that they can come up with will be very similar to the Affordable Care Act, because Obamacare, really, what that was a conservative neoliberal policy. It was proposed by the Heritage Foundation, and it was codified into law by Mitt Romney. So how are they going to create a plan that's substantially different? The only thing they can really do is propose a public option or move towards a single-payer system, but we all know that that's not going to happen. And Donald Trump did, in fact, state that he wants to come up with a plan that would allow all Americans to have health care. Now, the implication here is single-payer. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I would love for it to be the case, but I think Donald Trump is pretty naive if he thinks the Republican Party, who accepts millions of dollars collectively from the health insurance industry, is going to move towards single payer. He's incredibly naive, but I don't think Donald Trump is actually implying that he does want a single payer system. Now, the thing that the Republicans need to understand is that their base has no idea what the Affordable Care Act is or does. They don't. Many people think that the Affordable Care Act is different from Obamacare. I mean, there was a segment on Jimmy Kimmel where he made fun of people. I mean, this isn't a representative sample, but I mean, nonetheless, it illustrates the ignorance of people, how they think Obamacare is bad because it has Obama's name on it, but they don't realize that this is the Affordable Care Act. So nobody knows what's going on, and the Republican Party doesn't realize that their voters are uninformed. And they're uninformed because if you were informed, why would you vote Republican in the first place? So what they're going to do is they're going to repeal Obamacare. Their base will cheer them on. And then once their base realizes that they just lost their subsidy and they no longer have health insurance, well, then there's going to be hell to pay. And Republicans are going to get kicked out of Congress when this does inevitably happen. So, I mean, when it comes to whether or not Republicans will, in fact, repeal the Affordable Care Act without proposing a solution, I think they're stupid enough to do it. but only time will tell. And, they've already taken steps to repeal the Affordable Care Act. So we'll see. But I mean, it's not smart. And I really feel as though this is going to bite them in the ass.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.